Super. So Rana, I guess that you've talked there about the assessment process and how we will scaffold that and what that might look like. What about future sessions? So you've mentioned all of those creature comforts are at home, and especially if we're thinking about individual sessions with children or more specific sessions with children, what might that look like, and how might that process go?
Yeah, so I guess it is in a way quite different to an in-person session. In-person sessions, especially with play therapy, expressive therapy, are usually very open, very much child-led. So, kid wants to go and pick up a particular toy. We are led by them. We go and then play with that toy until they want to go and do something else. And we sort of scaffold that process with emotional regulation and with guidance and all those things. Now on Zoom, it's obviously a bit different. We don't have the same access to the same things. I've got my pens and paper, maybe the kid has something else. So I guess then the question becomes, how do we still interact based upon the fact that we have all these different things with us? I've got some toys, they've got other toys. And so what usually that entails is that the session might be a little bit more, depending on the age, scaffolded in slightly different ways. And of course, that's going to differ as well, depending on the individual and their interests and also the therapeutic intent. So for example, perhaps there might be a younger child and we're really focusing more on the play skills for the child. Now, if that's via Zoom, there's really only so much play that I can co-facilitate. I can obviously build rapport, but if that's maybe with a 3 or 4-year-old, that's going to be quite challenging to be able to do that. A child's focus at that age, being able to look at a screen for more than 2 minutes is probably pretty rare. And that's very normal. So in that space, it's looking a little bit more like almost like a parent coaching sort of session where previous to the session, I'll be in contact with the parent and I'll say, okay, perhaps for this certain part of the session, me and the parent are going to have a chat and then the child's going to come in. And so the parent can kind of introduce the child in sort of a safe way and is like, yeah, this is so-and-so. And maybe we have a bit of interaction. I say, what's your favorite toys? Can you show me? Or what have you guys been doing today? I've had kids show me, special rocks from the beach or, their favorite plush toys. They go and gather them from the house and bring them back and show them to me. But then maybe we engage in a little bit of play. But actually, I've told the parent, even though the play is going on at this time, the parent's actually observing that play. And then after the fact, the parent and I have a conversation about, okay, how was that? How was that for the parent? What did I notice? What did they notice? What did the kid think? What's their feedback about the process? So it's a little bit more scaffold and involves the parent a lot more. So that would be with a younger age child versus when you're getting to an age of maybe 7, 8 upwards, then it's mainly about what is the child interested in? Are they interested in creating comics? Are they interested in photography or whatever that might be? And as an expressive therapist, part of that work is creatively using my own process, I guess, my creative process to think, how can I be alongside this expression with this child and to be able to foster that? And I think online it does create, it needs a little bit more direction. Like we have to give quite a bit more direction than in person. In person, there's still a bit more of a dynamic flow. I think that can translate to Zoom, but I think it just requires a little bit more creativity on our end. So it's always interesting what ends up happening. And same with teenagers and those sorts of ages as well.
And it's interesting you just mentioned that little bit about direction there. And I think it's, so you've talked there about the structure and about how games can be incorporated, that structure of introducing what's going to take place in a session by conversations with parent or carer, whoever the other responsible adults are, they're involved with that child. So there's a conversation that's taking place there. There's already the scene is being set for the structure of what might take place, and then that's brought back together at the end. And then within that, you mentioned that potentially what we might see in online therapy is something a little bit more directive. It might be a little bit more directive. And I think really that just speaks to what people might experience with online therapy is initially picking up on the cues. of the general back and forth of how we engage with each other, and for younger children especially, because there's play taking place and they're learning those skills anyway, and now they're learning it through a different medium. Interestingly enough, some young people might be more versed at that than older people, because they grow up around technology so much sooner. But it's interesting, I think, just to raise that point, it's interesting to note that, but that will develop and flow over time as well, over sessions.
Yeah, exactly. I think online therapy definitely has its own rapport, especially with kids as well. And as you say, I think in a way they're more comfortable with it than the parents often, as they're just, I mean, especially as you get to sort of later primary school age, very much used to those formats. You know, vast majority of kids these days have had some kind of online schooling because of COVID as well. So, you know, I think they are fairly used to the screen time stuff. It's just keeping them engaged and keeping that rapport. And as I said, just staying creative. I think on the therapist end, that's what we endeavour to do. So, you know, I have all kinds of different things at my disposal to be able to draw on, which is great. And I think taking the child's lead, again, their interests is really what matters most.
Super.